And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the latest Overwatch League news, information, and esports analysis. I am your host, Humbly Drunk, and tonight, on episode 159, we got a bit to talk about. We have a new roster of the Chinese Valiant team that we're going to go over. We're going to finish our power rankings going over the top four in both the East and the West region. And, we got a little bit more details on the viewership incentive front when it comes to YouTube and a little bit more beyond that. So before we get into the news and introduce you to my co-host, let me just quickly take a moment to thank everyone who is joining us today on Twitch for our live show. And of course, thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me today, as always, is my co-host Anura. And Anura, this is kind of an odd week. We postponed the show. I had some stuff happening like earlier in the week, and we actually have more than what we traditionally have this late into the off season. So it's kind of a change of speed here as of late.
Yeah. It's a lot of news just dropped, and it's going to be honestly a lot of it's good news. A lot of it. And I think that it's gonna be an interesting one for sure. I'm excited to get into the rest of the rankings as well, overall.
Absolutely. And we'll probably go back and I'll post what our respective power rankings were in our Discord before we get into like the aggregate rankings, which we'll probably do once Booger gets back. That way you guys can see where the chips kind of fall at that point in time. But let's jump into the news. So first up, we have a new sign-in out of the Chengdu Hunters, who have promoted one of their flex supports, whose name is Monk. Perfect name for a Zenyatta player. This is someone who had been on Team Chaser, and that was kind of like their academy team, which the Hunters have kind of been quiet on that front. Before that, I know Monk was competing with Flag Gaming, which we'll talk more about Flag later on because we do have another player from that organization getting signed to the Los Angeles Valiant. But this is someone who has pretty deep roots in regards to the Chinese Overwatch scene. Maybe not as long tenured as some of the other ones. But all in all, like I always like to see promotions when it comes to like the tier 2 sign-ins. I feel like, when you put in the time to a player, you're invested in them in the long term. So whenever I see a promotion going from academy to the Overwatch League, specifically to that organization, I think more times than not, that's more benefit to the player than if they were to just find a new home entirely.
Yeah, that's the reason the system's in place, I believe, is to promote your players. And this to see that happening is a really good sign that it's a healthy contenders and an academy team. That's always a good sign. I know a lot of people also like trading off their players or trying to get some money out
Well,
of it,
that's
but
a
the main
Boston thing.
right, yeah, it's like I get it, but the main part should be like you believe these players could be Overwatch League one day. You put them on your academy team to build them up into what you want them to be, and apparently Monk has shown enough to where he can play in the Overwatch League. Do I think he's gonna play this year? I don't know. Far away looked pretty good. But in general, I think that he could probably take some time off of him, or even play double flex support if they really need to.
Yep, Epson wouldn't be
Um,
too uncommon.
right. It really just depends what they want to do with this guy. Maybe they're just gonna try to let him compete and he can take the starting spot.
Yeah, there's definitely
I
been.
don't know much about Monk. I don't watch a lot of Chinese
Yeah,
contenders, just because the time zones.
absolutely. There definitely have been times though in the past where.
Yeah, it's just
Oh, go ahead. I don't know if our timing is off or if you're lagging behind me.
oh, I think our timing's off for sure.
Hmm.
Um, shoot. But I don't really have much else to say other than I want to see this guy play.
Right
So
on.
whatever you were gonna say, it's
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like in the past, there have been a number of times where we've had like two really good flex support players. Where, I know this happened primarily with like the Guancho Charge with Shu and literally any other flex support that was on the team. So it wasn't that uncommon to see kind of like the backup player kind of go to like a two-way contract and then earn their way back into the Overwatch League if it should come to that. But who knows? Maybe double flex support is going to be a thing. I've been hearing a lot of stuff in regards to that on the current experimental card, which granted is only for this Flash Ops tournament, but we have seen plenty of Baptiste Zenyatta compositions in the past, so it's not necessarily like okay, like you're not going to see any playtime. First we got to see what the meta is going to evolve into at that point. But double flex support hasn't necessarily been the mainstay in regards to the compositions that we have been seeing in the past. So I don't think it's going to be like as prevalent to the extent where he will be seeing half or like bulk of the playtime in this case.
Right. No, it at the end of the day, it should be a good signing for them. I think it's going to be a strong one. I'm hoping to see a tougher Chengdu than what I predicted,
Hmm.
but you never know. Maybe this is their final piece to their puzzle.
Right? Yeah, because I know you and I both had him seventh out of eighth in their respective regions. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yep.
Now, outside of that, we do have Fleda's MVP skin being released into the game, which is available to purchase now for the cost of 200 Overwatch League tokens, which is what, like $5, something like that, $10. I can't remember what the ratio is
I think it's
nowadays.
5.
Okay. So this is like a good versus evil theme for this game, which I thought was kind of interesting. So you got the light side, you got the dark side, and it's kind of like intertwined in the middle. But I think the announcement that followed it grossly outshadowed the announcement of the MVP skin itself, and that's the fact that we are not going to be getting any more commemorative skins for the Overwatch League MVP. Now, this comes, a couple of weeks, I think, at this point, in regards to everything going on with Sinatra and the allegations going on there. And, you've had people talking about not wanting to put resources into this when they should be working on Overwatch 2. And then you have the other side who's like, well, if a single skin is slowing down things that much, then just get rid of it. But man, like this definitely felt like a blow, because now just getting the MVP is just like, oh, I got an award, but there's no like in-game way to commemorate them anymore after this point. So it's kind of a bittersweet feeling. I really do like the skin. I do not play Echo, so like I'm conflicted myself in regards to whether or not I'm actually going to be purchasing this, even though I do have the Overwatch League tokens. But as the soulmate of the group, I feel kind of obligated knowing that it's Flediskin. So more than likely, I'm gonna end up biting the bullet and biting this one.
Yeah, I think it's a good skin. And I think that I think it's a solid skin. I'm not the biggest fan of like the angel or devil thing. I never saw that out of Fleta, but if
Hmm.
he believes that, then that's fine. I do think he's pretty nasty on some heroes. But the whole thing with the last MVP skin kind of it blows. It's one of those things where it's like you finally get someone immortalized in your game. That's unheard of, and it was happening every single year. Now that they're taking that away, it just makes you wonder what really makes MVP special. Is it the $100,000? Is really nice. I would say, honestly, really nice for a lot of players. Or is it having a skin that will always be in the game that you've been playing or grinding for years now to become the best? I personally think that the skin is probably closer to these players than well, I think 100K was just for Fleta at the end of the day. But it was it's just sad to see. I hope they replace it with something. I hope they have something in mind. Whether I don't even care if it's like a wall somewhere where it just has their pictures up. That'd be kind of cool. Just like one map have a section that has like Overwatch League stuff with like the championships on one side and like the MVPs on the other.
Mhm.
Don't know what they're planning. I hope it's something to do with Overwatch 2. Maybe they're changing the skin game. I know a lot of people want different weapon skins, other than gold, which is the only one you can get. There's a lot you can do, and I'm hoping they have a plan other than just like we're getting rid of this and we're not replacing it with anything. I feel like we've had a lot of that. Game Pass is one thing that when we moved to YouTube just went away. One of the we just need something to replace it and to really put MVPs back and somehow immortalize into the game. Um, but we'll see what they're gonna do. I think they left it open ended on purpose. I don't think they just like would drop this without any reason. But
Mhm.
we'll have to find out for sure.
Yeah, as long as they don't like stick those random pictures in like this tiny cat cafe in like a deathmatch map that really no one
Yeah,
is going to
doesn't
see
matter.
in the game, you know. We'll just see on that front. But moving on. Speaking of the Overwatch League, we got some updates in regards to the viewing incentives that are coming this season. With the Overwatch League, and I should preface this by saying like this stuff should be live for the upcoming Flash Ops tournament with the experimental card, which is happening this weekend, actually. So we'll get to see some of this stuff in play already. So up first, we have more ways to earn tokens by what they're calling encore matches, and this is kind of like specific to a couple of teams that moved to a different region. So the encore matches are going to be airing before the West region games, and they're primarily going to highlight the New York Excelsior and the Philadelphia Fusion matches. Now, I know you and I were kind of like talking back and forth about this decision before the show. You like it for the token aspect because, let's face it, not all of us are going to be at home with the Overwatch League stream on and maximizing our token drop rate or anything like that. So having another chance to, earn a little bit more each week, if you are available to do so, is always going to be a plus. But for me, knowing that the start times in the East region are just awful for NA audiences, if you are a fan of the Philadelphia Fusion, unless you were a diehard, I can't imagine a lot of people would be making the decision to be like, all right, I'm going to wake up at, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning in order to watch my team play, and I'm going to start my day then, or just go back to bed right after. No, a lot of people would just check out the VOD because that would be more convenient for them. But now this timing lines up a lot better for the local fan base of those teams, which is great to see because, when they made the move, there was definitely a discussion on whether or not they were kind of alienating their fan base. And this is a way for them to at least still have that sort of showcase in NA where it's not going to be the detriment of the viewer. Oh, we lost Nura. Feels bad, man. I do not have a one cam overlay. I am going to switch it back to starting screen in the meantime while we wait for him to come back. But anyway, so that's really cool to see. So if you are a fan of the Fusion or if you're a fan of the NYXL, you're going to be able to catch them at a more reasonable time rather than staying up before sunrise in this case in time. Now, outside of that, we also have the clip-in functionality coming to YouTube, and this has been something that the fan base has been wanting for quite some time.
Okay.
Welcome
Okay.
back. All right, let me switch us
Oh.
back. Well, I'd already moved on, so if you want to share your thoughts on the encore matches, feel free.
Oh yeah, more tokens. That's all really I need to say. Some of the games should be fun too, and
Mm,
I won't have to wake up in the middle of the night for it. So that should be cool.
absolutely. So a lot easier mentally and physically for the fan base. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'll
Be
tell you,
nice.
like I've been up at times watching Contenders Korea at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning to watch Runaway, and it's rough. Like I would not
Yeah.
wish that upon anyone by any means. But we have the clip-in functionality back this time with the YouTube, and this has been something that the fan base has been wanting for some time now because obviously Twitch clips is one of the more prominent things on Twitch. Not having that available on YouTube Was kind of good and bad in a way. Like, it was good in the sense that Reddit wasn't completely flooded by nothing but highlights like we would see on the normal Play Overwatch Reddit. I think that was probably the best case scenario for competitive Overwatch. But it also kind of took away because for a lot of these people that are like making frag movies or things like that, they would have to like manually go into the Overwatch League viewer through the BattleNet client in order to find content, basically, or just to have like B grade footage. So now at least things can be honed in a little bit more, and it's just so much easier to access with a clip-in feature than what they were having to do in the past.
Yeah, it's perfect for the Overwatch League. It's one of those things that we missed out a lot of last year. I'm hoping people might go back and clip some stuff that was there before, because I think it's available now. You can go back and any VOD from the Overwatch League and start clipping.
Mhm.
But it's I think it's perfect, and it should bring back some really high tier moments that get to be shown by the world. You can think of like the Franz Aryograph, stuff like that, where it's like it's a lot easier to clip these things and really put them out. Not only that, like the funny stuff with Watch Point and all that stuff. Sometimes they just have really good skits. It should be exactly what people have been clamoring for a bit now. So it's exactly what we needed. Um, I'm excited just to clip some stupid stuff that I see on the side. I remember back in the day, people used to clip all the posters, and we won't see those for a bit. But
Mhm.
whenever it does come back, it's gonna be nice to just like, hey, check the one like back far right that says something stupid.
Right.
So yeah, it's gonna be it. I think it's what is needed for YouTube gaming as a whole. And I apparently more top creators are getting this. I'm hoping that it just becomes a feature for live for people live on YouTube in general.
Mhm.
It shouldn't really matter who you are, but I'm glad Overwatch League has it. I think it's gonna be used a lot more than what people are thinking, and I think content's gonna go way up because of it.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those features that is probably going to be kind of like slowly released over the course of time. Kind of like what we were seeing with the like squad treatment and things like that nature. So
Right.
outside of that, so we have clipping. We also have the return of the All Access Pass, which they dubbed it Classic because typical Blizzard fashion. That's just what they do. So that's coming back along with the player cameras, and yeah, this is another one of those things that they kind of took away. Um, I don't think the All Access Pass is mandatory. Like I think if you are watching Overwatch League, and you're interested in trying to improve your own game, and you want to have a player specific point of view, then that's great. I think you can learn a lot more from that than just, the basic overview, like what you currently see on the stream. But I don't think it necessarily like detracts overall from like the viewing experience. So, this is just kind of something that I could kind of, take or miss, but for the most part, I'd say I preferred it for like the overhead map, which was kind of like the 2D one where it showed
Yeah.
all like the player icons and their ultimate charge and things like that. Like that was pretty cool information to have just to see how the casters would kind of like integrate it into their play calling. But I just like the information that was displayed on that specifically. So if I'm getting the All Access Pass, it will primarily be because of that, not so much because of having the player cameras back, even though that is a great function as well.
Yeah, I think you put up a great point with the overhead view, which I wish they just put on the actual broadcast more. I think it really does clear up a lot of things that are going on in the game that you can't see with the way they do it. Um, All Access Pass has been probably one of my favorite things just to support the Overwatch League with.
Mhm.
So normally it's a certain amount of money. You get other rewards other than that. No, I don't know if they're doing that this year. I really didn't look into their All Access Pass. I didn't. I just thought they were having player cams. I guess I skimmed over it too much. But overall, yeah, All Access Pass has always been one of my favorite things for the Overwatch League. I thought season one and season two was great. I never got the shields up little icon that was on Twitch. The it had shield and then up, whatever it was. It was like split.
Oh,
I
that
never got that one.
That's terrible because the Valiant one this season is definitely going to be pretty prominent with
Oh
the
yes,
Win Zero.
1-0. Yes, 1-0. Oh geez, I forgot about that. The 1-0 was perfect. I wish we can use that. But yeah, I mean, it was always a great function. I think a lot of people loved it. A lot of people was really mad when they saw it go away with YouTube.
Mhm.
But hopefully YouTube should. I still believe YouTube eventually will surpass in viewers for most things, just because it's YouTube and people are used to using it.
Yeah, more
Uh,
accessibility.
yeah. So as long as we get more from them, which it looks like they're actually working with us. It feels like last year's kind of like a makeshift. Yeah, we'll put you on. Now they're like actually implementing things. Super nice. I love it.
Yeah, we also have support for 4K quality for viewership for the games. I'm I'm kind of conflicted by this. Like, I don't know a lot of people who are like, "Oh man, you know what the Overwatch League is missing? 4K." I don't know anyone who's like that. So, it will be nice if it works. That's kind of like the other thing that I'm kind of skeptical of, just because YouTube quality hasn't necessarily always been the crispest. So if they can roll this out without any sort of hiccups, I would be very surprised.
Yeah, I does Overwatch even run in 4K? Am I stupid on that?
I don't. It did not in the past, no.
Right. So I get it. I get why they're doing it. And I have heard that it after like 144 well, 1440p
Hmm.
YouTube does get crisper on that area, which I'm hoping that's what happens, and you can just watch it on like 144, not 144p, but like a thousand, whatever it's called, p. Once you get
As long as they
past
work.
1080, once you get past 1080, it should like start looking really crisp. I'm hoping that's true. I think last year it was really a big problem with the broadcast and
Hmm.
the quality of video. We were told that it has more bits, more all this other stuff, but when we got to the games, they just did not look as clean. Um, Even as like 2018 World Cup on Twitch, it just didn't look as clean as that, that was the beginning of the like whole color changing. That's how I got in the Overwatch League. Is I looked at that, I was like, this looks amazing. I want to watch more. I'm hoping for a crisper overall experience with Overwatch League, and I'm hoping that this 4K brings that to the forefront. It's like, hey, we want a crisper view. We're giving you the option of having the crispest, like the most crisp view possible. But we'll have to wait and see for sure. But there are other aspects that will be probably 4K and it's gonna be really nice, like watch point. I don't think the player cam is gonna be 4K. I don't think that's
Hmm.
even possible. But I'm hoping like Watchpoint and certain other side projects should be like 4K and really nice to see.
Absolutely. So Funny did post an announcement that had dropped during our recording. That's for the desk crew for the 2021 season. So back we have Zoe Reinforced Custa, and looks like we have Danny Lim coming to the desk this year, who had traditionally been uh, one of the translators and interviewers for some of the Eastern players. So always good to see some fresh faces, and keeping a bulk of the crew that we've already seen in place as well.
Yeah, I like this desk. I think it's really solid. Last year I really wanted a Vast. Now I still want him on my side stream. I think he's still a fantastic little side viewer when you're watching the games. Danny Lim's always been a favorite. I'm glad he's back in the league. I think he really missed it last year.
Hmm.
And I mean, the other three have been fantastic. I think that hopefully the Overwatch League out on content side, it seems like it's going more in the favor of what people think is best versus like some other main guy, main head in the company thinking what's right. Like it's more power to the employees. And so I really do think that this next year we should see a lot more interesting things from the desk. I'm excited for it. I think Daniel M's a good person to have there. It means you can have guests who are Korean and they can translate as well. And so it should be really good. We'll
Hmm.
have to wait and see for sure. But last year it still was a solid desk. I think they can do a lot with the guys they have. I'm excited to see what they do next.
And I know Ubershouch just put out a video here within the past week, kind of like giving an update on his situation. Obviously, he just had a kid here recently, and he's been working a couple of other gigs in the meantime since he currently is a freelancer because of just the way that the contracts were kind of structured to end in, I believe, October. He did confirm that he will be back for the Overwatch League casting this season, so we'll still have Mr. X and Uber Shouts. And like for Mr. X, like we've talked about his promotion in the past, so and granted it's going to be Overwatch League and CDL because he does have grassroots in both of those particular esports. And like I know there's been so much discussion about like the evil Activision Blizzard overlords like completely ruining the structure of the league from the top down, but it feels like we're starting to off balance that with the recent changes that we have seen on the personnel front. So hopefully that is just a sign of better things to come. Not to say that, they're in a terrible spot right now because they're not. But it does give me more hope because there have been a number of content creators who have kind of like looked at the landscape and just kind of washed their hands with it and walked away at that point. So hopefully some of these changes is going to liven up spirits or just, bring people back to viewing the Overwatch League. And, hopefully at some points we will actually be viewed as a tier 1 esport, but we're not there yet. And I don't think anyone actually believes that we are right now, anyway.
No, I don't. I don't think anyone believes we are. I do think we do have a tier 1 broadcast team and the way we run it. But in general, until we're not there yet. Yeah, you're 100% right. We're not there yet, and I still believe we can. I think this would be the best group we've had in general of like how we run the Overwatch League and how it's been made. I think the tournament system's perfect. And it looks like they're doing a lot to help the broadcast of it as well. As long as the observing's really good, I think this should be the best season we've seen. It kind of sucks that it's on like a down year where like nothing's really happening with Overwatch to counterbalance it. But I'm still hoping that we should see a lot better. I'm hoping we see better and more consistent viewership throughout the year with the changes they've had. Um, I think it's gonna be easier to watch, more digestible as well. So we'll have to wait and see for sure, though.
Well, there are always going to be factors at play that could be a detriment. One of those being maybe a lack of interest in particular teams when it comes to viewing how they are. Of course, I'm talking about the LA Valiant. So, the Valiant finally announced their roster on Weibo or Weibo or however the heck you pronounce it. So, the Chinese social media, they announced it. Still not a peep on Twitter. Which, like, maybe they don't have anyone handling that. Maybe they are just tucking their tail between their legs and just staying quiet, for a while. I don't know what the deal is on the social media front for them in particular. But we do know who is going to be competing on this team. So looking at your tank line, we have Silver 3, NVM, as well as Show Chain. For DPS, they have Crystal at Hitscan DPS, which is the one that we knew about. We have Lanrain on Flex DPS, followed by Wea at Flex Support and High B at Main Support. Okay. So we basically have a combination of former players from T1W, former players from like Lingon, Esports, Flag Gaming, and then, we have a pair of former two-way Quanzhou Charge players in Crystal and Wea. But there are two glaring things that, if you're not familiar with the Chinese Overwatch scene, will stick out like a sore thumb. And that is Show Chain, who is playing off-tank for this team. This is someone who had primarily been playing Flex DPS in the past, so that makes me worried, for one. And then you have Hybe at main support, who is from T1W, who has never played that role. He was an off-tank lifer, basically. So it's just like, Okay. I see. To me, like, let's say someone is swapping roles. To me, a flex DPS going to off tank makes some sense. Just like a hit scan DPS playing like Zenyatta or Anna or Baptiste would also make a ton of sense. But the off tank move into a main support role is just one that makes me just shake my head. Like, I don't see the transitional period there where it's going to be smooth sailing, where, all of your game sense and fundamentals are going to be one for one. Like, it doesn't translate as easily as some of the other particular swaps that we could see at position. So, I don't know. But, you look at this team and you have a ton of rookies. You have some players who wouldn't have been the first choice out of the Chinese region, and then you're just kind of thinking like, you have two off signings that just reek of desperation. So it's like, how much were the Valiant organization trying to like lowball people like with the offers, or whoever's operating them at the time? It's one of those things, but it sucks because you look at the team and their DPS line has potential for sure. Will Crystal be the problem child again? We don't know. But knowing that you don't have that familiarity on your tank and your support line really scares me at how well this team can do, because they're basically going to be starting kind of like in a similar position where we saw the Vancouver Titans whenever the Runaway swap was, when Runaway had their legs like cut off from underneath them and they brought in a bunch of contenders players. So it just feels like right now, going into the season, you're gonna have the LA Valiant competing in China, which is already one of the deepest regions that we have right now, where it's gonna be like two or three steps behind the rest of the pack, more than likely.
Yeah, you could say it's like Vancouver. You could say it's a lot worse than Vancouver. I mean, they have their main take MVM. I think it's like supposed to be Nevermore. He hasn't played since 2018. That's ridiculous. Shouldn't be even. Hasn't played competitively since 2018. He might still be playing ranked or whatever, but that's ridiculous. I don't understand how you could even do that as an organization. I mean, they've stated that they didn't want to pay any buyouts. That's why they have the certain players they do. All these guys are supposed to be fairly cheap the way they do it. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. They're doing it. At the end of the day, they've cheated the system. They've found a way to keep their spot while also basically saying, I don't care. We don't. There's rumors that they've even said that they'd be happy with one win this year. That's absolutely insane. I really can't believe that this org even thinks this is nearly okay.
Mhm.
Um, Now someone had, I think it was on Tactical Crouch, that ESA said that there was a team performing worse than LA Valiant. I don't see that happening. Even if they're having maybe worse scrims, I don't think on game day they'll be even nearly as bad. Um, I just don't think I don't think it's possible in my opinion.
Mhm.
I don't think this team uh I think uh Crystal and WYA are actually pretty solid as a flex support and DPS, but the rest of the team are mostly for me unknowns for a reason. Because they haven't really performed well. They haven't played in a while. I mean, they have literally part of their core is um from 2018 roster of I think T1W.
Mhm.
Like it's a bit of a mess, and I don't know what else to say other than uh good luck, I guess. I don't even know if I want to say that, but at the end of the day, I'm not even excited to see this team. I will be surprised if they start winning games and are actually good. That's not because they scouted out these players perfectly. You can tell that's just plain luck. And don't hate the players, hate the organization, what they're doing. Um, they've done this so many times. I don't know how many times we've talked about a Valiant scandal or a problem in the league due to them being weird. Like last year, it was them
Mhm.
dropping all their players and then moving away from their basically the way they built their team, which was like around like the agility space and like all this content creative. Um, Taking away some fan favorites. They brought it back with Packing 10. They looked really solid, and then they tore that team apart too. I don't know, man. It's just I feel like if they keep tearing at the fans and stuff, they're already the most hated team probably right now, I'd say.
Mhm.
But it's really just it's a mess, and I'd love to see them lose every game. But I'm not gonna put myself through that bad. Um, I mean they've always been gladiators rivals, so it's one of those things where it's like, all right, I'm glad I'm right about them. We'll see how it goes though.
Yeah, so Ren was saying in Twitch thread, I can't say that I'm surprised at the LA Valiant attitude, but that's just sad. What happened to competitive integrity? And that's going to be something that a lot of people are going to be asking. There are just going to be times where a team is going to come into the league that a lot of people are kind of like dogging on or don't think like they deserve the spot. And it could be due to organizations being cheapskates. Maybe they don't want to spend the money and they're kind of like banking on just payrolling a couple of players until they kind of like get their feet underneath them to make better signings potentially going into the next season. But like I can't imagine from a coach perspective, like if I'm on the LA Valiant, that like winning one game is going to equate to them being quote competitive. Like no, you're basically looking at okay, even if you're not winning any games, if you are taking maps off of teams, or going to map fives, or whatever, or go in the distance, so to speak, in the current format, that's a better indicator of where you are. So as long as you're not getting like 3-0'd left and right and just getting completely shat on every step of the way, you know, that's a better sign. I don't think you necessarily need to win matches, but you would look back at the Dragons' winless season, and there were times when it came so close, right? But there's
Mhm.
a distinct difference in the fact that right now you have an organization here that completely was looking to uh, backtrack out of esports entirely, got sold overseas to China. So it's you can't really make all the parallels because despite the Dragons and how they were at the time, they became that Cinderella story. So they already kind of had that platform where you had people starting to cheer for them. And sure, maybe they were cheering for them just because of the meme. Maybe they actually really cared about the team. Maybe, they were one of the people that were crying in the Blizzard Arena when they won that first match. But the LA
Mhm.
Valiant to me right now don't have that sort of personal investment from the fans, at least with this particular group, where they're going to have that sort of fanfare. So like even if they're being competitive, I don't know if we're going to see the parallels between the two teams, knowing that they have a lot of ground to work on in order for them to get to that point. Because a lot of the Overwatch League fans, or a lot of the fans of the Valiant, are just looking at the Valiant and just kind of like scoffing, like they don't understand why things happen the way they did, why when they do announce something, it's only on Chinese social media. Like we haven't heard anything on the Twitter front. So it's just like you fumble the ball, you're trying to pick it up, and then instead of picking it up, you just kick it. And it just goes further and further away from you. Like that's the game that we're playing right now. So at what point are the Valiant going to own what they're actually doing and just say that they were the ones at fault? Because I think just them admitting like, hey, like we did what we could given the circumstances, I think that can at least start to build that bridge between the organization and the fan base. Because right now it's not a good look for the team. It's not a good look for the Overwatch League, and we don't want to see a team right now in the Overwatch League that just isn't competitive or can't win the game. So I don't want to see the Win Zero memes coming out again. Like, I want to see the Valiant be competitive. I want to see if they can match what we saw from the Titans revamp when all those contenders players came in. Because if not, the toilet bowl isn't going to be between Houston and Dallas. You know, it's going to be over in APAC now with the LA Valiant, and that's not what we want.
I there's not even a team. I don't think there's a team that would even give them the toilet bowl. Maybe in a really bad meta for them, but I honestly I believe that every single APAC team should just dismantle this team. Maybe one or two map fives, but I don't see this team winning nearly as easily. I'd give them a shot if they're in an A, but they're not going to play any North American teams
Hmm.
or Western teams at all. Um, it's they're in the worst region to do this, which they moved over to do this. And now I mean, they're never going to be in the spotlight. I don't think they're ever going to be in the spotlight because of the sole reason of spotlights are probably going to mostly be during the tournaments when the actual games mean something more other than just an extra win, which every game does matter this year, but I think the tournaments should be a lot more viewership,
Hmm.
and a lot easier to digest for these people and players. So for me personally, at the end of the day, I just probably I'll check their scores and then I'd look over a few of their maps or the highlights, but I'm not gonna try to put myself through analyzing this team if they're gonna just like go here to lose. It's just not worth it for me. I don't think it's worth it for most people. Now if they win a game, yeah, I'll have to check to see what they do and how they play. And I'm sure one or two of these players might be good enough to find a team next year. I doubt they're going to be doing the same thing with the same players, especially if they start doing well. I don't think they're going to try to pay out these players. I do think they're going to keep going this budget route. I mean, they've done it 2 years straight now.
Hmm.
We'll have to wait and see if they come back to North America, or I can see them doing that as well. And we'll just have to wait. But yeah, I just don't want to. I don't want to think about this team until until the season starts. I'm just gonna let them be.
Yeah, you don't you want that headache to resonate going into the season. You'd rather deal with it later. Just prolong the
Yeah,
inevitable. That's what you're gonna do.
I've been mad for months now, so it's just like might as well just let it go until you get to see them. And um, hey, sometimes I think WWE has the heel and the it's like the hero, whatever it's called, like the good guy and the heel.
Yeah, the face and the
This
heel.
is definitely a heel roster. Yeah, this is definitely a heel roster. I don't feel I feel bad for the players that are probably just gonna go through some losses, but this org just keeps putting out um so much disappointing stuff, and I'm kind of tired of it.
Right.
It's getting old for sure.
Absolutely. And like maybe it is the better to just let things simmer, like just go dark for a bit, like the Valiant social media, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll be forgotten
Hmm.
about, and then the league will start up, and then everyone will have that reminder because it's literally going to be a punch in the throat if they aren't competitive. Whew, man,
Yeah.
it's gonna be rough, but we'll have to see how they do. But the first time they take a team to the limit, I will definitely tune into that game, or if it's a win. Those are
That's
my
fair.
parameters, basically, because I'm worried it's just gonna be 3 Overwatch, and that it might not be much outside of that. But anyways, guys, let's move into our main discussion for tonight. So we are continuing our power rankings. So we're gonna go over the top four in both the East and the West region. Since we just finished talking about the LA Valley, what better way than to talk about the East region? So we're talking APAC here. All right. So Nura, there are 4 teams that we have not talked about yet. We have
Hmm.
the newly minted. That's not even the right word. The newly transitioned to APAC Philadelphia Fusion. We have the Shanghai Dragons, who were the powerhouse of APAC this past season. We have the Hanzhou Spark and the Seoul Dynasty. I'm pretty sure that was the same on both of our sides with our remaining teams at this point.
That is correct.
Okay, so
Yep.
I would say out of all of these teams, you and I are probably on the consensus that Hanjo is the team that we're not confident about. Because
Yeah.
I have them at
100%.
number 4, but this has always been a team who, on paper, I look at. I was like, this team has the pieces, and they could be a really good team, but they have kind of been entrenched in that dogfight in the middle of the pack with Guangzhou for like all of eternity. It feels like it just feels like these two are just trading jabs left and right, and there's very ever a clear winner between the two. Now, our confidence was a little bit shaken with the Guangzhou changes, in regards to, some of the new personnel that they were bringing in. And, like, I had to say, like, I saw them pick up Bernard, they signed Min Su, formerly of the Titans, and I was really feeling it. They've made some pretty good signings. Uh, you know, Architect is back, they got Shy, they got Leech, who's been phenomenal on the off tank role in China, especially on the Sigma play. So I'm really excited to see how this team is going to do. But Hanjo has always been a team who, like, I want to put stock value in. But until they're able to, like, kind of separate themselves from the middle of the pack, it's really hard to know where the floor is for this team and where their skill ceiling is at. Because I have nothing but confidence in Gushui and in Liege and their tank lineup. But kind of like everything else at times kind of falls through the cracks. So it's kind of hard to quantify this team as a whole, knowing that I still don't feel like we have seen the best iteration of this team, or they just haven't been able to put together all of the pieces in the right situation. So I'm waiting with bated breath to see where this team is going to go. But for now, I feel pretty confident that, they're still going to be kind of middle of the pack. I do think we will see more of a separation between Guangzhou and Hanzhou, where it's not just going to be, all right, we got a couple of teams between the two here that are just 50-50. I think we start to see, them take that step forward where maybe instead of 50-50, it's going to be, 60-40 or something like that. So a little bit of separation with the new sign-ins, but I want to see more from this team because I like the social media presence. I like the players on this team. It's just a matter of can we get that sense of consistency throughout the entirety of the season rather than win one, drop one, and then, they're just not really making up any sort of ground in their respective region.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. For me, it's more of I don't see this team going much higher than I couldn't see this as a top two, a number
Mm,
one team in the APAC region. I could never see them that far. I do see their average higher than most other teams, and that's why I put them up here. I still think teams like NY Excel, if they play better than I'm expecting, I could see them going higher. I even see Charge at some points if they overperform, playing better than this Spark team. But I think overall Spark should be pretty good. For me, it's just all these players just don't equal best in role, except maybe Gushue sometimes.
mhm,
Um, I think yeah. League A or a Liege is a solid pickup. Most of these pickups that I've really liked from them come from actually the Chinese side. They have I think they have 5 Chinese players and 7 Korean. I've really liked I think Shy might do really well. I think Siu and Su will be solid for them. Godsby Architect. Godsby looked solid as well, and Architect had some times where he seemed like he was one of the best players, but he never looked good on Spark, in my opinion. He never
mhm.
like overperformed on Spark the way he did on Shock. None of them scream best player in a role to me though. It's kind of sad to see Gushui, Lige. I'm hoping they can do more mixed roster things this year, but if they can just because last year I feel like they only had Gushui, even though they picked up Chinese talent. Hopefully they can bring more Chinese players into this roster and really use them the way I think they can use them. Um, Sport Lion is really they don't really excite me that much. Mika Coldest, I think, is the better. group from IDK MCD, but that's just my opinion. I think IDK kind of fell off after season 2,
Mhm.
and even season 2 he looked all right. I'm excited. I hope they bring in Meek and Coldest more. We'll have to wait to see. Um, every position should be super competitive for who gets starting positions, but I don't know if that's exactly how it's going to go with the language barrier. Hopefully, they have someone working with that and really helping with that. Um, I think this team could have a high chance of just doing nothing surprising, and that's why I have them at fourth. But I do think overall their talent is above some teams in the APAC region.
Right. All right, so we got Dynasty Fusion and the Dragons left at this point. And as easy as it would be for me to, sit here and tell you guys, I'm biased, which I am. That doesn't mean I'm not putting the Dynasty third, because that's where I have them.
Ooh.
So Dynasty are always a curious case, right? In APAC, we've seen all the storylines. We still until the Dynasty win the championship, we still have that ongoing battle to whether or not they can actively live up to their namesake. Because being, the Korean Golden Boys is a hard act to kind of like live up to. Because they are Korea's team at this point in time. And, this past season, we saw a very good patch hit for the Seoul Dynasty, which was definitely to their benefit. Seoul lasted a lot longer than anyone would have given them credit for at that time. And it just made me think, like, all right, like, that is the top threshold for the Dynasty, is what we saw this past season. Did they win it all? No. But they came close. But it's hard for me as a Dynasty fan to just shake the fact that there's always going to be that discussion that they lucked into the meta at that point in time. Similar to what we saw with the Washington Justice, with, Decay just completely taking over the game over in NA. And there have been too many inconsistencies right now, still to this point. More so, I'd say from, like, the coaching level, where I still don't have complete confidence in the direction that this team is always taken. But we know that the talent is there. So it's just I've seen them trade barbs with the Hanjo Spark. That was a team that used to have their number that kind of changed this past season. And the Dynasty are one of these teams where season to season we have seen that sort of gradual progression in regards to how they're faring throughout the entirety of the season. Which is honestly not something that a lot of teams can say in the Overwatch League. Sure, you have teams that are consistently doing well, but they're not building off of where they left off the past season. They're kind of just uh, flatlining, so to speak, because they're not making any sort of movement. Or you have a team who's just constantly trying to fight their way out of the toilet bowl. So right now it's like, okay, well, what am I going to bank on? Am I going to bank on the fact that the Dynasty are just kind of coast by based off of their talent, and then maybe they'll make a deep run in the playoffs should the meta dictate it at the time, or if a patch hits or anything like that? Or am I going to be a realist and say I've been burned too many times by the coaching staff of this team, where regardless of the talent, there is always going to be detriments from the top down. It's really hard. It puts me in a weird spot because I really want to believe that the Philadelphia Fusion are going to come in to APAC again and shit the bed for a fourth time, because I've seen it. I've lived it. I've seen what happened to Fusion University. I still have Zachary's cursed jersey that I won from one of their giveaways that I wore to the World Cup when he played. And what did he do there? He shit the bed. All of these things keep happening, but I can't deny the level of talent differential when it comes to the Fusion, the Dragons, and then the Dynasty. The Dynasty right now are still going to be that third wheel. They might not necessarily always be in the discussion. They're going to be kind of like on that bubble potentially reaching that breaking point where they can push past that point. But I need to see him more consistently throughout the entirety of the season rather than just willing it into existence with patch changes. You know?
Yeah. Well, I don't have them at 3. I have them at 2. And
Really? Okay.
yes, and for me, it's less of the reason of their talent overall, which sounds crazy, and more of what they've been able to do every single time. This is even I'm talking about profit and
Hmm.
gesture. I mean, they've done it every time. You bet against them, and they'll do it again. Season 1, Len Spitfire, they won the whole thing. This time, season 3, literally a year later after a crazy goats meta, they start to pop off again, and they really do. Just when they figure out a meta, they are dominant in it. And
Right.
the only team that was able to take them down was the Shock. I mean, they beat Shanghai Dragons, the most elite team that was in APAC. I think it was pretty handily that time.
Hmm.
I don't remember for sure.
Well, they took both
For
of the
me,
top seeds the distance every time they played in the playoffs.
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you can't deny that this team has the second best chance of winning the league in the APAC region, and that's
Hmm.
just my opinion. Um, every single time they do it, I hate to see it. You're a big Soul Dynasty fan.
Right.
I've never been a huge Dynasty fan. I think that what they're doing is, although could definitely backfire, is super interesting with this roster. I mean, they put a lot of faith into you. Um, seeing him as the main flex tank this year. I don't know if they're gonna bring back Marvel on flex tank. We'll have to wait and see. I'm hoping they just put him on main tank. I think this guy is actually really solid and he can beat Gesture in some positions.
Hmm.
That didn't happen last year, but I'll say it again. I still think that's gonna happen. And the support line, really solid player in Animo. I don't like ranking main supports that are Korean because we can't hear their comms, but his mechanics are pretty good, and he really did help NYXL out in the first season when he joined. So it seems like he's a really solid player and creative from what I've seen. Has improved, not only improved but looked really good and dominant in certain heroes like Ana. And so I'm waiting to see more from both of that support line and to you before I really start believing this team can do it again. But at the end of the day, am I really high on Soul in general? No. But dude, I think they can continue to be streaky and have really, really high highs and low lows. Yeah,
Right.
100%. This team will definitely make tournaments. They will definitely probably dominate some APAC parts of the tournaments and maybe some I can see them winning a tournament or two. This is the Soul Dynasty. This is the same profit gesture that's been doing it since season 1. I can't bet against them. That's why I have them at 2. Um, and you can talk about your number 2, which I think we both know what it is.
Hmm.
And I'll talk about my number 3 afterwards and why they're lower.
All right. So I had the fusion at the second spot. And like this was a hard one because as I said, like I love the narrative of the Philly swap to APEC and whether or not they can reverse the course of history. And I think the thing right now that is going to throw everything off, and this is why this is a hard team to rank, is because we don't know what the visa issues or the status is on this team. Like, what is going to be the team that we see on the stage or competing online at the start of the season? Because this could be a team who doesn't have all the pieces at the start, who might have people playing off roles entirely, who just we don't know. And that's the thing that honestly scares me about the Fusion. So this very well could be a very slow start for the Fusion, but I think the level of talent is going to kind of like outweigh that. Now, have I been a fan of all the changes that the Fusion have made? No. I I did not agree with the Fury release, who's now over on the Justice. Picking him over Poco to start on your main roster was a weird move, in my opinion. And that's probably something that I'm never going to be able to wrap my head around, if I'm being honest. Like, I think the Poco Bomb aspect of him as a player has kind of been overvalued because the level of flex tank in the league has just leveled up. Like it's gone up so much over the course of these past 3 seasons, where I think a little bit more alt efficiency honestly isn't going to make or break. Kind of like the tier listings in regards to how a team fares in this case. So Pogo to me was a downgrade overall. But they're just kind of like sticking to their guns. Like this is a team that's built around Carpe. So you have Alarm and Funny Astro for your support line, which should do well. Uh, but what's happening with EQO? Like what's happening with all of your basically like foreign talents who are having to travel to Korea, and that's the part that is holding me up because the Fusion at their core had been outside of the Dragons, the most consistent team this past season. But they suffered from the New York Excelsior syndrome, where when it mattered, right? Like, what happened? The Philadelphia Fusion, I'm not gonna say showed up and showed out. They arrived, to the playoffs. I wouldn't say
Mhm.
they showed up because that was honestly probably one of the most demoralizing experiences that I can remember in regards to like Overwatch esports history as a whole. But I have faith in the organization primarily because this has been a team who have been able to make that sort of transition. They have learned, at least at the Overwatch League level, how to maintain their level of performance through and through. Maybe it was just the approach. Maybe it was just a patch where everyone else just seemed to be a couple of steps ahead of them. I don't know. Like it's so hard to kind of like wrap my head around. So I'm really curious to see your thoughts on this team because I agree on the argument for like the dynasty in regards to the skill ceiling, like that they have the
Mhm.
potential to be the best team. But until that they are able to hit that point more than once, it's kind of hard for me to rely on that argument.
I mean, that's fair, and I think that as on a player base, I'm higher on the Fusion than you are.
Right.
I think Poco battled against Fury, one of the best off tanks that we've known for the starting position for most of the year last year until Fury finally got it at the end.
Hmm.
He barely got beat out, in my opinion. I think that just shows how his skill is still up there as one of the top flex tanks in the world. Mono, I think, is an upgrade in my opinion. I think he's more consistent than Sato. And I think he can do more. I mean, Sato had in my opinion, the best support line I've seen in a long time with Funny Astro and Alarm.
Right.
These guys are insane players, and I I honestly I don't know if they're mm, I think they're the best support line in APAC. If I have to think about it, maybe in the Overwatch League, I don't know for sure. I'm not. I have to look at that more closely. My main problem with them and the reason they're lower is I'm still not that sold on Carpe anymore,
Hmm.
and him being your star player, he has to show that he's not only just a dominant hit scan player, but he's got the skill and smarts to move past that. And that's mainly why I put him at third. It's just like this DPS line could be amazing, fantastic. I still think that Soul, Fitz, Profit can easily go above that at certain points, and that's why I have Soul higher. And then I mean, Shanghai DPS and tank line are still really good. Um, but overall, this team is super solid. I don't see them going lower than the top three, in
Hmm.
my opinion. And I could see them going higher, as high as two. Really sticking it to Shanghai sometimes, maybe. But I do like your. It's kind of like a storyline of how will Fusion do in APAC, because the last time we saw them in APAC was the tournament where they went 0 and 4 or 0 and 3, 0 and 3, whatever it was.
Hmm.
No, 0 and 2. It was 0 and 2 because they just got out of it.
Yeah, because it's double
But I
elim.
still think that yeah, they might have a rough start in the season with what you're talking about, the visa issues, but if they get past that and can get their full roster here, I think they have a really, really good, solid DPS core. I think Shockwave, EQ, Rascal will do really well this year. I'm excited to see what they can do with a guy like Shockwave, um, as well as I mean Rascal should be is always fun. He's always the most he just feels like the most dangerous guy in the server every time he plays, in my opinion. Um, so I'm excited to see what they can do with this DPS core. I think the tank line's solid. I think the support line's one of the best in the league. People are sleeping because they got rid of some of even players that I thought were really good, like Hisu, Ivy, but and Fury, of course. But we'll have to wait and see. But I still think that they'll do fantastic in the APAC region.
Yeah, I think for me at the end of the day, when it comes to playoff time, with odds no longer in the Overwatch League, he signed with T1 Valorant. Who's gonna be the guy who just comes into the lobby and has everything shut down? Like, who's gonna be that play impact player who just completely turns the tide or just controls the overall storyline of a game? Because even at the times where odds fell quiet, the Shock still found a way to win it all. you know?
Yeah.
And that's a testament to the strengths of everyone else on the team. So I just want to see like who's gonna be like that assassin type player when it matters most this season. And who knows, like maybe Rascal is going to be that guy this season. Because he definitely has the potential to do that. So
Well, yeah, I have a name, uh,
mhm.
but we'll talk about it another day because I'll talk about. I've been researching NYXL a little bit, and I'm getting a little excited for that team. But we'll talk about them later, on another day when I have more time.
Absolutely. So that would leave our top seed, which, to no surprise, is going to be the Shanghai Dragons. And, obviously, it's a very easy thing to just say, all right, this has been the best team in APAC, so they're going to get the top seed. And yes, like, yeah, the Dynasty did beat them this past season. So I'm sure some people would make the argument that because of that, maybe someone would rank Dynasty higher. I don't know. But this has been a team who has been clear cut above the rest. You had the big three within the Overwatch League. You had the Dragons, you had the Fusion, and the Shock, basically. And for the most part, like the top team never really shifted. There was always an argument of, okay, well, what's stronger, APEC or NA, between Dragons and the Shock. Uh, we saw who won that one in the grand scheme of things. But we've had some interesting changes on this team, and I think the biggest storyline kind of going in was the swap at main tank, where they went out of their way to pick up Fate at the main tank position. You also have Airser coming in, formerly of the Atlanta Reign. DM is back on the Dragons, which I'm kind of excited about. But man, I have to tell you, seeing Fletta's progression this past season after leaving the Dynasty and going to the Dragons, that was something that, obviously, like when the trade happened, I felt like I was punched in the gut. Like, I'll be honest, like it was a big blow. And I had seen Fitz play and I was still excited. But over the course of the season, I thought for both of those stories played out so well. Like you couldn't have asked for better. Like the Profits combination for the Seoul Dynasty paid huge dividends throughout the entirety of the season and into the playoffs. And then Fleta came into a new environment on a new team and ended up winning the league MVP. Like what a story as someone who's kind of been so integral to competitive Overwatch since its earliest days. So to see those two storylines kind of like reach the pinnacle within the same season was just something that I never would have expected. And I know a lot of people had questions about how Lip was going to fare in regards to like being the second DPS option, but he played fantastic throughout the season too. But for me, like I want to see what the plan is for Airster because with Atlanta, it just we didn't we didn't see what we wanted basically with that team. And I feel like on a team where he is going to get more support, similar to like what we are expecting to see from like Shockwave with the Fusion, like we're going to get to see when he plays the best Airster put forward in front of us and we've gotten to see in the past. Because it's just a completely different environment. He's got a stronger core around him. And now there's more of an opportunity for him to just go out there and just unleash or take chances that he wouldn't have been able to otherwise because he wouldn't have been able to follow through with them, so to speak. So I'm expecting good things from the Dragons again. I would not be surprised if this is going to be like another, 2-3 loss season, because that kind of seems to be the threshold right now for like the top teams. So it's crazy to see, but man, I want to see like the top three this season be as competitive as I'm expecting them to be, because there might be a lot more jockeying for position this season than what we had seen in the past, knowing that we do have uh more competitiveness kind of like at the top, knowing that Fusion have moved over as well.
Right. No, 100%. I think you're right on the money. I think one thing we do need to talk about a lot is their head coach Moon. This
Mhm.
guy has, I think in the 3 seasons he's had two that were like I think the number 2 seed. I think LA Valiant made number 2 in season 1, if I can remember. I don't remember for sure, but they were really high seeded going into the tournament, and then the Fusion beat out Shock in regular season ranking to do it. I'm thinking about Fusion. I don't know why I went to Fusion, but Shanghai, of course, Shanghai went number 1. The last year. But my main thing is for them. I'm excited for these new pickups. I mean, we've seen what Lip and Fleta can do as a DPS core. Void's still one of the best off tanks. Lee Jae Gong really solid. I want to see what Molly could do. I think Molly is one of those things where a lot of people aren't talking about him, but I can see him actually starting over Izayaki in some points. This guy, he's although he's Chinese, he can play. I mean, he can speak Korean pretty fluently, and so it should be really interesting to see how they can bring Molly into this roster. I think they put a lot of faith in him. Fate, we've talked about him as well. Although I don't think he has the highs that Fearless has. I think in general, he is just such a solid tank, and he can play any position super well. Moon has a lot of faith in them. This is just a solid roster all the way around, and you can't. I don't see a hole, and there's a lot of times you can find a hole in the team. You don't see any holes here. Uh, there's a reason they're number 1. They proved it last year. Now we'll see if they can do it again. I'm 99% sure they're still one of the best rosters in the league, even with a whole bunch of people ranking up. They were just that solid last year. So I'm excited to see them play. I think everyone is excited to see if they can do it this year. If they can finally win the Overwatch League, something that they were really close to doing last year, fell short at the end. But
Mhm.
now we get to see more Dynasty versus Shock, Dynasty versus whoever's good in NA. They should have more harder games more often with the 4 tournament system. So I'm excited to see them. I don't have much else to say other than I think this team is just full of insane players, and it's unfair they have so many. But it's good that they have this many going into this year.
Absolutely. So let's shift over into the Western region for our top four. I know you and I have kind of like flip flopped on a couple of teams, and if I'm not mistaken, the four teams we haven't talked about are obviously one, the Shock. We have the LA Gladiators, Dallas Fuel, and the Florida Mayhem. I believe are the four we have left, respectively.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh huh.
All right. So I'll be honest. There are two teams on here who I have flip flopped about probably 80 times. Because on one hand, there is the cycle of misery, for Dallas, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Hmm.
then you have Florida, who has been a team who I would say is more in the category of meme to dream, essentially, because there has been improvements on this particular team these past couple of seasons where we have really seen a very big turnaround from the initial iteration that we got. And I don't know, man. Like I really want to buy into the fact that Dallas is gonna be the team this year. Like everyone is putting their stock value in Dallas. Rush has complete control over the roster, and that eases my worries just a tad. But at the end of the day, it's the organization that I personally do not have faith in. So I have Dallas fourth. I have the Mayhem above them. And that's purely from an organizational perspective because time and time again, Dallas tries to take power away from the positions that matter the most for like building your roster. And whether it's at the roster construction or whether it is not allowing them to make swaps when the coaches need it, that is always going to be a thought that's in the back of my mind. So until I know for sure 100% Rush is going to have full control of this team through and through, I can't put as much stock value as I would like to in the Dallas Fuel right now. Now, does that mean that I think that they're going to be a bad team? Absolutely not. Obviously, I have them in the top four. That speaks in itself, knowing that this has been a team who I actively dog on, as well as the Houston Outlaws. And, sure, part of that is because a lot of our friends are Dallas Fuel fans, some of which are on our network, some of whom may have stepped away a bit from Overwatch League, content creation. But that doesn't mean I'm going to slow down on pile in on any time they drop the ball. Like, you look at this team, and there are sweeping changes, right? They got Sparkle, they got Hanbin, they got Fielder, we got Repel coming in, Fearless, Jexay, Exy. Like, this is the iteration that we wanted to see from the Paris Eternal this past season. And, we're going to get it this season, only in Dallas at this point in time. So, I don't know. Like, for me, I like everyone on this roster. I think Jexay is kind of like the one I'm kind of bullish on because I don't think he was as good as a lot of the Outlaws fans try to hype him up to be, or just didn't match that level of play. And for me, like just seeing Sparkle and Doha together is gonna be like a great a moment just because like they were absolutely lights out on Element Mystic. But is the magic off knowing that there was that time of separation between the two when we didn't get to see Element Mystic at their entire core at the Overwatch League ready, or can Rush somehow, find that spark again for this team? Like, it's going to be a very fun storyline to watch throughout the entirety of the season. But Dallas always worries me because, it's you go back to that cycle of misery, and we're at that point where we had the sign-ins and everyone's like, oh man, like this is the year, right? This is going to be the year that Dallas shows up and just they win it all, and then the season starts and the cracks start to form, and then people start to get bullish on the team, and then they're like, oh well, maybe next year. And then they have a period, like they'll have a tournament where they do really well, and then they're like, all right, we're back on track. Like, this is good. This is it. Like, we're rebounded. And then it happens again. Like, it's so constant with this team that, I really want to see them break the cycle. I think they have the talent on this team to do it. It's just a matter of, can Dallas Fuel see out of their own heads, or do they not even care about the past failures of this organization? Like, maybe the talent is just doesn't even have that on the forefront of their mind, or it's not even something that's even crossed their mind. But for me and for the fans as a whole, I I want to put them higher, but I can't do that and not be like, oh man, like I messed up. Like this is gonna blow up in my
Mhm.
face because it's happened so many times. Anytime someone puts Dallas in the upper echelons of the Overwatch League when they're fielding high and then they get low blowed.
I I'm right there with you. I understand the history of Dallas Fuel. I have them at 3,
Okay.
and the only reason is there's some problems with Florida that could occur that could make them a lot worse than last year, although they
Hmm.
could also make them a lot better. But I'll talk about Dallas first. I think that their DPS line is pretty pretty good. I say that they have the tracer problem that everyone's been talking about. They don't really have a same tracer player. That's my main worry about them. Tank line's insane. Support line could be really really good. I think Fielder is one of those guys that people don't talk about enough. He was insane with 200 ping on Paris. This Paris team, really did fall into a terrible meta during the postseason for them. Like absolutely the worst meta they could probably get is what they got. And I mean, shoot, if it was the right meta, I think they could have made the top four and gone off and really showed what they can do against APAC teams. I really do believe that Paris could have done that. I think it was honestly so sad to see them go off so early, and now they're the Paris Fuel or the Dallas Eternal. So we'll talk about Dallas Eternal now as a whole. I think they've improved a lot of roles in general from their previous team. It does suck that they don't have FD God and they got Jexay, but I think Jexay was a highlight of a really not good Outlaws team. And that shouldn't be understated that he really did try to carry as hard as he could. And so did Fielder. These guys on the support line can really I think although people might not say they're the best, I think both of these guys can carry on certain at certain times. And so for me, I put them at 3 because although I think Florida Mayhem could be more consistent or a better team overall, I think Dallas has a higher in certain metas, of course, has a lot higher ceiling. I mean, they have Fearless and Hanbin. I think those are two of the best flex and main tank, flex tank and main tank in the league. And although we haven't seen them together yet, I think if they have good synergy, this could be an absolutely dominant tank line. DPS line at certain times should be dominant as well. Doha sometimes scares me, but overall, I think that they've built a really really solid roster that can do a lot, and that's why they're this high.
Hmm.
Other than that, I mean, that's the only problems is I think we'll talk about in a second is Florida Mayhem your number 3
Yes.
or yes, okay. I'm gonna talk about them as 4 first real quick
Right.
and the reasons I have and then you can come in a second. But Florida for me it's really so close. If they have the best energy, they have potential to be number 1 in the league. I really do believe that. DPS, I'm disgusting DPS line. For me, I think Yaki's probably one of the best players. People don't talk about him a lot, but he really did show up last year with BQB. BQB showed up and showed out. I think he overperformed past a lot of people's expectations of him. New player checkmate, fantastic. I think he's going to be a great addition and really fill in that hole that they had at certain times with DPS. Tank line OGE, um, he's known to be inconsistent. The reasons we have him here, I have him at fourth is mainly because we don't know how OGE is gonna do compared to Fate. I think Fate's a really good glue. Meanwhile, OGE is still kind of a or OGE is the way he likes to say it, but it's kind of the way he's still developmental in a way where it's like you don't know what you're gonna get with him. I still think his mechanics are fantastic. This is the first time we're going to see him on a full Korean roster, and that should be more interesting than normal. I think Gargoyle is still great. I think it's great that he's coming back, but in general, I think in the top four, this tank line is still probably the weakest or second weakest, depending how well a team coming up tank line does. But for me, this tank line's a little scary, and that's why I mostly have it fourth. I think Gargoyle is still great. I think OGE has potential to be one of the best main tanks. Has not reached that yet in the 4 seasons he's done it. Um, Support line's fantastic. I think Slime's upgrade to Chris. I don't know how much of an upgrade. We've only seen him really with the Vancouver team, which he looked great with. And then they kept Gundam Jim, who is fantastic. I still think this team, no matter what, it's going to be top four. Um, I do think that Washington and Toronto could be fighting for that, and even Florida should be fighting maybe with Dallas Fuel to hit that spot. But I mean, if Dallas, I think Dallas just has more potential.
Mhm.
That's why I have them where they're at. Meanwhile, I think that Florida could be consistent, but they could just be consistently all right with this tank line.
Yeah, for me, the reason why I had Florida above Dallas is more so the coaching staff and just the level of improvement that we have seen from Florida over the course of these past few seasons. So when they brought in Kuki, this was after Kuki had been coaching on Runaway. This was a team who uh wasn't that great, like before then. And ever since then, we've seen a lot more, I would say, like, personal investment when it comes to coaching insights from the Florida Mayhem, which is honestly something that we haven't really seen from any of these other Overwatch League teams. Like, I know there's a lot of times on social media where, like, after the fact, you hear tidbits from, like, the coach and dugout, from, I think it's Swingship, like, one of their translators, and just hearing, kind of like the verbiage or some of, like, the discussions that are going on between Kuki and the rest of the Florida Mayhem. And, for someone who, like, going back to him as a player, I I thought he was just okay. Like, I wouldn't say he was a top performer at the roles that he did play, but to see him transition into someone who has become one of the better head coaches, not just at the contenders level, but also someone I'd probably put, top five in the Overwatch League at this point on that particular position. It just shows what sort of, game sense he has, and from a player turned coach, he has provided the best results that we have seen in Overwatch esports, which I think is a really cool thing to see. And I just think the Florida Mayhem and, the relationship with Kuki, there's like this camaraderie that we just don't really have a light shown on with some of these other teams. So I do put more value in them because of that. He's not just a good talker, like, using like a political term, but like he knows what he's doing and he knows how to implement it where we can see those improvements from the team. And sure, like, maybe some of those improvements might just be like incremental. Maybe they're not going to be the most notable thing, but you do get to see them implied in the game, and they do find success with the team that they already had. And, going back to Chris, a lot of people, like, when they were looking at the Florida Mayhem, Chris was always the scapegoat on this team. A lot of
Hmm.
people looked at his main support, and they were just like, well, that's the obvious weak point. Now they don't have that, so this is going to be the season that is going to be the pure indicator of whether or not that was the actual problem with this team. But, as you said, you hyped up the DPS. Yaki, out of the rookie class this past season, honestly, DPS wise, was at in the upper echelon. Like, I thought he was one of the best DPS that we actually saw, and I think because Florida in the past maybe hasn't had the biggest fanfare or they haven't made the biggest splashes, he kind of went under the radar because of that. because everyone is looking at this team with their rose tinted glasses, thinking like, "Oh yeah, this is going to be the same meme team that drove the bus and things like that." When they're a completely different team now, and this is a team that has been pushed in the playoffs. You know, we've seen this team picking up that momentum. And I think with the pieces that they have had, they're going to continue to build off of the platform that they are currently on. So I expect the Mayhem to be the best iteration that we have seen. And, by year's end, maybe people will be talking less about like Rush and more people will be talking about Kuki at the head coach role because there's a lot more there than what people are taking at face value. So I highly recommend you guys hop on social media and check out some of the conversations or like the translations that we have seen from Swing Chip so you guys can kind of get some more insight on that front because not a lot of people talk about that at all from what I've seen.
Hmm. I agree. I think I really do like this. I'm with you. I really do like this Florida Mayhem team. I also really like this Dallas Fuel team. It's really just a difference of which one you think will perform better, and it's kind of hard to put both of them into play. But are you ready to talk about number two?
Well, I think there's no doubt who number one is. uh,
Yeah,
so that would leave the LA Gladiators at the second spot. All right,
interesting.
I know.
I'm joking. Yeah,
Yeah, you're not fooling me. Nice try.
right.
I'm not. I'm not going to buy into it after you already made the point of the tank line. So you kind of
Oh yeah, it's
tilted your
weird.
hand early. So
Interesting.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
it's crazy.
Okay, so the
Crazy.
LA Gladiators are in a bit of a restructure this season. They had kept Space, Birdreen, and Mirror, and we've seen
Hipster.
Kessler was the other one. So we got 4 returning players and 4 new players. So we got Muse coming in, as well as Shu and Moth for your support line. And Skewed is also, like, most of their signings were support. So the Finnish trio no longer on this team. And, I remember when we saw Moth wasn't returning to the shock, and everyone kind of like gasped all at the same time, where everyone's like, what the F is going on, right? Like, no one knew what to expect or where he was going to go. And everyone's like, oh man, Moth is by far the biggest free agent signing that has ever been in existence in Overwatch esports. And I don't know if I buy that storyline to the extent that people are trying to blow it out of proportion. That's not to say Moth isn't fantastic at main support, because he is. But everyone like really was drumming up that narrative over the offseason. And, Shu coming to the Gladiators, I'm really happy about because I I always liked watching the charts. Like, I liked the players that that team had. The problem was it was APAC. Like, I didn't really have a lot of time to watch the VODs or to go back and catch their matches or anything like that. I wasn't staying up until God knows what time in the morning to see how Shu was performing. And most times that I watched him, he looked pretty damn good. So to see him on an NA team, I'm ecstatic about. But really, the question at the end of the day is, how is the integration going to work with the new talent? How is Muse going to hold up at the main tank position? Because, you look at some of the tank lineups, and uh, Muse is coming from. I mean, he's been kind of like all over. He's been with Eternal Academy. I know he was on loan for a while. He played with World Game Star Phoenix. And I think there was another team beyond that, if I'm not mistaken, for a tournament or two. Um, but for the most part, like this isn't someone who I consistently hear people talking about, and that kind of worries me. But he's been on really good teams. He's been on teams that have very good systems, who have had success in contenders, like between World Game Star. He was on Talon Esports before that, who were very good in Pacific. But it's hard to know how somebody is going to fare on a new tank line compared to positions that have already been fairly well established when the level of play has been increasing over these past few seasons. So there's always going to be that little bit of skepticism when it comes to the new talent coming into the Overwatch League, you know? I think as a whole, you and I both have a lot of faith in the Gladiators organization because I think they are one of the better ran organizations and they had that level of consistency kind of from season to season. But the thing that worries me, and this is like the one thing that I've always had a hard time ranking the Gladiators, is despite that level of consistency, they haven't really been able to push past that point. Like, I don't think there's ever been a point in time where we've had the discussion of like the Gladiators being the elite team or being top three or anything like that. So I'm hoping now that this DPS lineup has been situated, you know, they have that synergy in place now, so they have more to work off of. You know, they're familiar with their play styles, how quickly they earn their ultimates, when they engage fights, all of those things. Like, I feel like that, when you combine that with the support line, which for a free agent pairing of Shu and Moth is honestly probably better than, or it can perform better than 90% of the Overwatch League, that really opens up the floor for the rest of the team. So now it's just kind of like, all right, let's let these guys go out and play. So I feel like the overall openings for playmaking on the Gladiators this season is going to kind of like outshine some of the pieces that we might not have as much confidence in. So that's why I'm really excited about this team. Like, I just want to see like Bird Rain and Mirror and Kevster just go to town. Like, I want to see them fully unleashed. They're going to be just off the chain at this point in time. And, you know, who knows? Like, this could be a 180 for this team. So the sky is the limit, in my opinion.
Yeah, I for me, this is I think the first time people can say that we have potential to be number one. I understand what people might have said previous years, but I honestly think this roster is easily the best one we've ever made. Before they were pretty good and they're really solid compared to other teams, but they had some holes, and not as much as I loved the Finnish duo, they just weren't exactly they were never going to be number one, which sucks. I think their best season, that the season they were at their peak, was probably season one or season two. I'd say mostly season one was probably where they're at their peak, but they started falling off slowly. And I think season three really did show the problems with our support line and why we changed it. But Shu and Moth, of course, fantastic. I think even skewed when he played on those tournaments, which Gladiators, another thing we have never done is win tournaments, which this offseason we've won two. Doesn't really matter. They're all like for games, just for fun basically. But it still shows improvement. That even with a week of practice, we can beat top teams just with our skill alone. I think it's the only time we've had this much individual skill. One thing we need to learn, need to talk about more is Birdring. This is his second year back with a mixed roster. Probably going to be better with English. Kevster getting off high ping, fantastic.
Mm.
And Mirror with these two will easily be able to specialize more into roles. One thing I want to talk about, I do expect Kevster to being the mainstay. Birdring Mirror switch off more than what people are expecting.
Okay.
This guy is absolutely fantastic. I think Birdring's more of a hit scan specialist. He can definitely play some other heroes like the Junk and Tracer, but when I think when Kepster gets into this roster without ping, you're gonna see why people rated him so highly. Um, of course, we can talk about the tank line, Space and Muse. Biggest question mark. People don't really think Space is a top off tank anymore. I would disagree, and I do think he'll have to prove it this year. But for me, Space really does seem like he's on a different mindset than last year. And I don't know if it's just the new pickups that he's got. I feel like this is more his team than it's ever been. He's obviously going to be the glue for this team and how they play. I've seen him being like play lately, and he seems like he's in much better headspace than he was last year. Muse is one person I've been super surprised to see his development throughout the off season. This is just me watching streams as well. Um, it's just one of those things where he seems like he's hungry, eager, and ready to learn. Um, I mean, when Deepe brought him on, he talked about how he does think OGE still is better of a main tanker right now, but he says Muse potential is really high, and I think that's honestly where you kind of want to be with a main tanker right now. Um, I really do see them meshing super well together, which is something that I don't think really happened with Space and OGE last year. And then at the end of the day, I think that this team, I just think they'll mesh better than previous teams in previous years. I think Shu Moth will just save this team a lot more than previous years, if that makes sense. As in, like, as a support line, they will be able to connect and really pull out some map or team fights that was previously not possible with their previous support line.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I mean, for me, this is probably my favorite team to go in from the Gladiators. I've always liked season two team, but I don't think DK and of course Roar didn't really work out. And so this is really this should be the best we can get. I do see us making a pickup later on, but that's of course later. For me, I think this we have potential to be number one. I think we have the potential to be number four. I don't see us going lower than four. I see our high being one. Although we do play Shock in the first game, I do think, in my opinion, we're gonna win that first game. We'll talk about Shock in a second, but um, there's a reason Gladiators are at second, and it's honestly for me, it's just that Shock is built different, always has been. And so I
Absolutely.
don't know. That's all I really have to say about my team. I can go on probably for hours about each individual player, but I don't want to do that to people. But yeah, if you want to continue, we can.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's impossible not to put the Shock one. You know, they're back-to-back champions. They're the only team in the league who swept every other team. Uh, Not to mention like the golden stage that they had at one point where they didn't drop a single map. You know, it's just like,
Yeah, yeah, that was
that's a
crazy.
lot of accolades that you know I don't know if those are going to be repeated at any point in time. So you know, it just speaks volumes about this team. So the only departure that we see from the back-to-back champions is Ons moving over, as I mentioned earlier, to play Valorant over on T1. New additions include FD God and main supports. You know, since they moved Moth, who's now on the Gladiators, they picked up Nero and Glister for your other DPS who will join Striker and Tayo. So I have to say, like, obviously, no problems with the tank line. Smurf and Super have been complementing each other very well. You know, there are just certain metas that Super's going to be the better fit. Certain metas where Smurf is going to get the play time. And, you know, Joy's just kind of been in a league of his own at his position in his region. So, really no problems there. And then, you know, like last season, I remember, like, everyone's like, oh, man, they picked up Twilight? Like, how is that even fair when they already have Violet? So they're just like hoarding top flex support players. Well, that hasn't changed, but we have FD God who, you know, stylistically has a much different approach to main support than Moth. And that's honestly, to me, going to be probably one of the more interesting storylines to watch to see how he's going to get integrated into this team or how his playstyle is going to be different or if it's going to be more the same old aggression. Like, this could just be pedal to the metal type Shock offense that very reminiscent of like selfless gaming in years past. Or after God's gonna make more of an adjustment and it's gonna be more fluid, or it's gonna be more stop and go, so to speak. So maybe it's gonna be more adaptive of a playstyle for him in particular. But I have to say, like, you know, Striker is going to be kind of like he's gonna be your carry on DPS. And, you know, Nero has been a player who a lot of people have been high on for quite some time. He is one of the younger players in the league. And I don't know if the charge infrastructure was going to be the right fit for him, but he's still on a mixed roster on the Shock. But if I'm looking at players in the current landscape who I think are coachable enough to be built up to be one of the better flex DPS players in the league, I would say Nero would be in that discussion. And Glister was one of the few bright spots of the London Spitfire this past season, despite them having kind of like a wish-wash season, so to speak, because that was another team who did well at times, did awful in others, but like never really looked like they were going to be like top five in the region. So that's like another curious case to see how is he going to do now that he has a complete team around him as well. So I don't know. Like on paper, the TPS lineup could be really good, or it could be just a step down from what we have seen in the years past. But I don't think the coachability of their players has ever been in question on this team. It seems like no matter what changes they make, this team delivers. And, obviously at the top spot, like I don't think that's going to change anytime soon because in Krusty, we trusty. I mean, that's been the saying since day one, really. Outside of the initial shock reaction when Ons was signed, and everyone's like, "Why the hell did they pick up a widow specialist?" And then we got to see Ons in the playoffs just being just complete lockdown in the lobbies, where it's just a complete madman on the hit scan roll when we were seeing Tracer Ash with him and Striker, which was really just a sight to behold at this point. So we'll see. We'll see if one of these newer DPS signings is going to kind of fill that role. But, I'm not going to take anything away from Striker. Striker has that carry potential regardless, even if at times he might get outshadowed like he did this past season. But he wasn't like anything worse than like a top three at his role anyway. So you're not losing anything, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, this is still the shock. It's still going to be the shock. Still has been the shock. For me, I think you hit it pretty hard with the DPS core. I think that they are the biggest question mark going this year. I think this team's going to be insane. I think Glister and Nero have been on obviously worse teams and still been the stars. I think
Hmm.
Nero he gets a lot of flack, but he's probably about to prove why he's been known as one of the best flex DPS or projectile DPS players in the league. I'm excited to see what Krusty can do with a guy like Glister. It's honestly scary. This guy has so much potential, and from what I've heard, he's been insane. So it's honestly scary. The main question for me is what's Tayo gonna do? I hope he has a bigger role. I hope we actually see what Krusty has in plan for Tayo. Tank line hasn't changed. Not much to talk about there. Support line, you talked about FD God. Um, I hope the mechanics don't get the best of him. I hope he because Cressy, after working with a guy like Moth for a lot of years, I'm pretty sure he knows how a main support should play.
I don't know. He struggled
And
in
I
that
think FT
Lucio
God,
show match.
true, he did. But that guy, he's really good at Lucy. But but yeah, that was a great thing that happened. I loved watching that. But my main thing is if they can get FD God to speed, with maybe the role calling or everything else, this team should still be pretty dominant. The problem is that there's a lot of teams that upgraded this year, and
Hmm.
last year they won the league and they won it really really smart by winning. They won control and then they won. I think they just won control twice, and that normally got them to the map because they had a lot of map fives. The thing is that it was super close every single time, and that makes me wonder: is this the year that Shock finally gets overtaken by someone? I think this is gonna be the closest it can happen. And that's not anything against Shock, but just a testament of how strong some of these teams are that are being built. Um, I think they're gonna have a bit of a rockier season, but still come out. I don't see a world where they don't make finals, not finals, but like the final tournament,
Mhm.
as well as most of the tournaments this year. They're still just as good as they were last year. In my opinion, I think that their DPS and support line should be pretty on par. It's just every other team's upgraded. You put them number one because you have to. I mean, Krusty has not proven you wrong. So for me, I really do. I'm excited to see Shock. I'm hoping it's not as dominant as last year, or the year before. I hope there's some interesting games, and I still think this team will come out and play. I have them absolutely 80% chance of them winning the league this year? No, I have it more of like a 50-50, or even a 40-60, but that's still higher than a lot of other teams, and that's why you have them number one.
Absolutely. So definitely a lot of stock value still within the Shock, especially when like really not a lot of moving parts with only one departure. So, keeping that championship team together has already paid huge dividends in the past, and we're expecting to see more of the same on that front. So that does wrap up our top four for the East and the West region. We will be revisiting and doing our, I guess, global or just league rankings as a whole. We'll probably wait for Booger to get back for us to do our aggregate rankings and math all of that stuff out to unveil that on a future episode whenever that is going to be. But that is going to do it for us here today. So with that being said, of course, as always, is if you guys would like to help us out, the best thing to do is to head on over to iTunes and write us a review. Let us know how we are doing and if there is anything you would like to see us incorporate into the show. Obviously, the league is starting up again here very shortly. Just a couple of more weeks. So we'll probably be planning on doing like, watch parties and things like that over in our community Discord. So we'll keep you guys posted both on Discord as well as our social media on that front. Outside of that, if you guys are looking for additional Overwatch content, you can find our podcast directory on our website with Overwatch Recall. That would be at owrecall.com. And of course, we do have our Patreon page where you can directly support this podcast as well as the network that it's on, where we have tiers started at just $1 a month. You can find more info there at patreon.com/OWL Network, where you too can join the likes of our master and above patrons and Daniel, Owl, and Kesha in helping our network grow. And of course, you can contact us over social media and all those good things. You can email us at contact@owlnshow.com. We do have our website at www.owrecall.com. You can find us over on Twitter at OWLNShow, as well as find our video content on YouTube at youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. You can talk with all of us over on our community Discord at discord.me/OWLNShow. And we do stream our podcast live on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLN where, right now, Overwatch League Network has kind of been on the flex schedule. So, easiest way to do that is to just follow us on Twitter to know when we are recording. We do have our Fantasy OWL podcast, OWL by the Numbers, returning here very soon. That will be Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific time, followed by Heroes Never Die, which is our variety Overwatch show, airing Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time, which has kind of been on a bi-weekly recording. So keeping that in mind as well. And, we will be talking about Overwatch League to some capacity. We're still planning that out, more than likely. The things that we had been discussing were following a specific team for the season and just talking about their games. And the teams that we were talking about are, okay, this is not going to be any surprise to anyone because it's coming from me, the Seoul Dynasty or the LA Gladiators. It's going to be one of the two. I can assure you of that. It'll probably be the Gladiators, though, just knowing that, it's NA, and it'll be so much easier for us on that front. But more on
They're a
that,
pretty cool team.
more on that later. But outside of that, of course, you can contact our host personally over on Twitter. You can find Booger at BoogerBrainz. That is BOOGERBRAINZZ. Over on Twitter. You can find myself, Tumbly Drunk, at Tumbly Drunk. And Nura, where can our followers contact you?
Oh, you can follow me on Twitter, Anura CC, ANURACC. I tweet sometimes. I think I've been tweeting less, but I don't know. I just kind of throw stuff out there and hope it sticks. But in general, yeah, you can find me there. I'll be maybe making more content soon. We'll figure that out later. Right now everything's in flux, so we'll figure it out. But right now you can just follow me on Twitter. That's all I really have.
All right, sounds good. So, with that being said, that will do it for us here today on Overwatch League Network. This has been episode number 159. Be sure to watch the Flash Ops Experimental Card Tournament because you can earn rewards. The viewing incentives are going to be there. I believe that's actually airing on the Overwatch League YouTube channel, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So, that's happening this weekend. So, go check that out. I don't know what sort of meta compositions we're going to see because they changed like 85% of the heroes for that tournament. So it's going to be a little bit different. You might see double turret Torbjorn. You might see double flex support. I don't know what the deal is. All I know is there's some shenanery going on that front. But we will see you guys back for our next episode. And we will see you guys then. You take care. Enjoy your weekend. And we'll see you next time.